if I had the microphone on stage for 5 minutes and I could say anything, do you actually know what it is that you're trying to share with people? If my post went viral tomorrow, would that give me anything? If I had millions of eyes on my LinkedIn profile, for example, and I could give them one action to definitely do, have I set that up for myself? As much as I'm all for authenticity, I think if you're able to combine that with a little bit of strategic thinking, then you're onto a winning personal brand.
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by Nicole Marguerite Gray, who is the founder of 5 to 9 Creative and a facilitator and a bit of a personal branding specialist. Nicole, so great to have you on the show. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. I am Nicole. I have worked in marketing for going on 8 years now. I founded my own business back when I was juggling a lot of different projects. I'd gone straight out of uni and into a full-time marketing role, which I loved, but it wasn't quite ticking the box of how much can I physically learn in one go and how many people can I really help and reach. So what I ended up doing was taking on quite a lot of different jobs, including website design, a lot of social media marketing, and really growing Instagram accounts, and at the time, Facebook accounts back in the day, from zero to significantly bigger. So my company was born out of the routine that I found myself in, where I would go to work. I would do my kind of standard 9 to 5 job. I'd come home, and then I would crack on and start working pretty much 5 to 9, as was common at the time for anybody with a side hustle or a passion project, on all of this work that I would be doing for my clients. And what I found in the end was that I learned a huge amount from working with those clients that I was then able to bring into my full-time job. So it really helped me kind of just level up the work that I was doing and get really creative with what I was testing and having a lot of fun with it. And that eventually evolved into a much bigger platform and business, which is now 5 to 9, where I work with founders that are building really impressive personal brands, whether it be on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or elsewhere. But I would say it's mostly those two, helping them to build really successful brands off the back of that.
So in your founder's journey, I think there's a couple of moments that I'd be fascinated to hear a little bit more about. I think the first one is, how did you get, so you've got your full-time marketing position and you're hustling in the evenings from 5 until 9. How did you manage to land those first couple of clients? And then the second question really is around the critical mass. So at some point you were like, right, I've now got enough going on here that I can quit my job and do this thing full time. So just talk about those two moments. First clients, and then second, the moment of critical mass and when you knew it was time to make that leap.
I would say the first couple of clients, I want to say it was tricky because I think it's a lot easier to talk about the underdog and the come up. And it doesn't sound very humble, but it was actually very straightforward. And I sort of fell into it more than anything. I think a lot of it, so my very first client came from a referral, and largely actually off the back of my personal brand. I think a lot of people look at a personal brand as something that has to be online, which I think 99.9% of the time it is. And a personal brand is a lot easier to curate online. You have a lot more choice about how you want people to speak about you if you're there and you're posting content and you're controlling the narrative. But in reality, a personal brand does kind of have a life of its own. You can't control how people speak about you when you're not in the room. You can contribute to it, but ultimately people are going to have their own opinions. So I had a personal brand, I would say, before I was even really showing up online that much. And that contributed a lot to me being able to reach out to people and say, hey, I'm doing this particular kind of work. Do you want more help with it? But a lot of it was inbound. So word of mouth was, I've been running the business for 8 years now, and I have never once done any outbound marketing. That is going to change this year, but I have never once had to pitch or apply for anything. I've been really, really, really lucky. But again, a lot of that is personal branding and just being able to know that people know what it is that I do and how to actually reach out to me. The point at which I shifted from, in my mind, being a freelancer that did freelancing on the side to being more of a solopreneur and working with freelancers and actually hiring more of a staff was when I had, can I swear on this?
If you like.
When I had a fuck it fund, when I had enough of a budget to say, okay, if this fails, if I fall flat on my face and I lose all my clients and I forget how to do any of the marketing and all of my funnels go downhill and everything just absolutely flops, I would be fine for, I think I had 5 months. I gave myself 5 months to just go all in. And at the time, I had a freelancer that I was working with. I had a VA who I was paying a monthly fee to. So not only did I need to be able to pay myself, I also had other people that were relying on me. So there was quite a big ask. And also living in London is not cheap. So yeah, I think the ability to be able to do that and know that I had enough guaranteed money coming in was the point at which I said, okay, let's give this a go. And then COVID happened and everything kind of flipped upside down anyway, but it worked out for the best.
Well, yeah, and you've certainly been navigating the complexities of life after COVID pretty well by what it seems to me online. One of the things that we were talking about just before Christmas is your recent keynote speech with Workshops by Wow. So tell us a little bit about that moment and what you were talking about. Like what was your shtick for the keynote?
It was all about being able to show up as 100% yourself online. It was largely geared towards a healthy mix of founders and really senior members of staff at really great global businesses, as well as some people that are fairly new to being self-employed or have recently started their own business. Um, and I would say if I wanted people to leave with one thing, it was the knowledge that they could post online authentically and in a way that didn't feel like they were just trying to fit into a box of what everyone else was posting about on LinkedIn or what everyone else was talking about on Instagram. They could show up as themselves and know that it was still strategic and genuine and something that was going to resonate with the right kind of people, and not feel like they were really kind of underselling themselves or being too vulnerable. So we walked through how best to do that, and the benefits of it. And yeah, it was a really, really electric session. It was a really amazing place to be, and a really great way to end my year. Because after that, I just clocked off and collapsed in a bit of a small heap. It was a very big event.
Well, that sounds awesome. And I'm sure it was a well deserved rest following the event. And I know that we're going to come on to talk a little bit about being more of yourself in your LinkedIn content and bringing that authenticity. And that's the kind of the main focus of the practical stuff we're going to talk about in today's episode. But before we get to that, I'm interested in two things. One is, who are you going to really speak to today? Like, who is your target listener? Who is the person that you think will really benefit from what you're going to say? But secondly, what do you think is the holdback for people? What do you think prevents people from embracing that authenticity off the bat? Because we're all human beings. It feels natural to be like, I'm just going to tell my story. I'm going to be authentic. What do you think prevents and gets in the way of people's like natural human nature to just be authentic online?
If I was speaking to anybody today, I could very easily say, founders. I could very easily say employees that want to leave and start their own company. But the reality of it is, I tend to find that the work that I do speaks to anybody that has something that they're really passionate about, something that they really want to achieve. Whether that is being able to do a keynote speech, go and speak on a stage in front of 100 people, in front of 500 people, in front of 1,000 people, people that want to do a TED Talk down the road, people that want to start their own podcast, anybody that wants to do something that really gets them excited, but they're not quite sure how to get there. I wholeheartedly believe that a personal brand can get you in pretty much any room that you want. You just have to know how to, which doors to open, which steps to take, who to reach out to. But it's the personal brand that opens the doors and gets you in. I think the biggest thing that stands in people's way, a lot of people know what they are supposed to do or what they feel like they should do. I think we get really stuck in the should. I should be posting every day. I should be connecting with this many people on LinkedIn every day. I should be cold DMing this many people. I should be writing this kind of thing. I should be telling this kind of story. So we know a lot of the buzzwords of we should be authentic, we should be vulnerable, we should tell our story. But the reality is that that's actually an incredibly hard thing to do, especially if you've never done it before. And it's so easy to look at people that do it really well and think, why why is my content not the same? Why am I not able to achieve that same level of authenticity? But the reality is you've not done a lot of the work beforehand where you're trying to work out, okay, well, who is this for? Who am I speaking to? Am I bearing my soul for the sake of it, and probably not feeling that great about it in the process? Or am I doing this with a real purpose? Have I worked out exactly what it is? If I had the microphone on stage for 5 minutes and I could say anything, do you actually know what it is that you're trying to share with people? Because I think once you're able to kind of reverse engineer your content a bit more and think about, what is my end goal here? If my post went viral tomorrow, would that give me anything? If I had millions of eyes on my LinkedIn profile, for example, and I could give them one action to definitely do, have I set that up for myself? Am I setting myself up in the right way? I think a lot of that drives the way that we produce content. And as much as I'm all for authenticity, I think if you're able to combine that with a little bit of strategic thinking, then you're onto a winning personal brand.
Okay, so why don't we dive now into talking about that in a little bit more practical detail? We want to give people things that they can take away and try, things that they can apply as soon as the episode finishes. And I think you've got a bit of a formula that you're going to share with us relating to this. So take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. I firmly believe that personal branding unlocks the doors, but a lot of people aren't sure how to actually build their personal brand. So when it really comes down to it, especially now when we have a lot of AI generated content and a lot of people are really leaning into the LinkedIn hooks and, here's 5 ways that I did this. Here's how I made £1 million in a week. Here's how you can do it too. And the listicles of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, people love a list. We're seeing a lot more content that is quite well written, but actually lacks the depth that really gets people to want to click follow, want to take an action on LinkedIn. So I think if I was to make a prediction for how things are going to go and the personal brands that are really going to thrive in 2024 and beyond, it's that really gorgeous balance of having a strategy in place, but also adding that extra layer of personality. And you can't AI generate a personality for yourself. I've seen people try. You simply can't. You can't make somebody interesting. So my formula, if I was to kind of summarize it, would be strategy plus personality equals personal brand. And I think it's very easy to do one or the other, but you have to have that balance of both. How that actually comes into play, there's a load of different ways of doing it, but I would say that personality, you can either go down the copywriting route or the visual route. I personally am a very visual person, so I would say that a lot more of my photography or any time that I post pictures of myself, there's usually a bit of color or there's something a bit playful. There's something that people can really look at and think, oh, okay, well, that's Nicole's picture. My profile picture has me in blue fur, or faux fur. And that went viral on Instagram when I first posted it a while back, for looking like the Cookie Monster or something. So granted, that's not my entire personal brand, but it's eye-catching and it gets people talking. And then with the copywriting, there's a lot of people that do this exceptionally well, especially on LinkedIn. Chance Marshall from Self Space is a really good example of this. So he's from up north. I'm not going to try and do his accent because I will absolutely butcher it. But he writes in such a way that you just have an impression of who he is as a person. It comes through in the way that he articulates himself on his personal brand and his personal profile, but also for Self Space. It creates almost like a warm hug in his writing. It's in the terminology that he uses. It's how he opens his LinkedIn hooks. It's just certain terms of phrase that you'd only hear in the North. And it's friendly and it's very, very on brand for who he is. And if you've met him in person, you know that he writes exactly the same way as he speaks. And for him, that works exceptionally, exceptionally well because he combines it with strong writing skills, the occasional photo. So you start to recognize his face and get that visual connection. And it's just done really, really well. So I think there's 2 ways of bringing in personality, 2 main ways, the copywriting and the visual. So if you can nail the balance of both, then you're winning.
So we've got this great formula for thinking about how we're going to approach our presence on LinkedIn, how we're going to bring in more authenticity. Strategy plus personality equals your brand. But even earlier in the episode, there were some real valuable things I think you were saying. And one thing that's just been standing out to me, I've made some notes here, but one thing that's really stood out to me is that there seems to be this bias towards making things easy, make copywriting easy, make content easy. But when we're making everything easy, we're often sacrificing our distinctiveness. And that's something that's really resonated. And I think what you've put forward to us, strategy plus personality equals brand, is a really great way for people to re-engage with what makes them distinctive. Don't worry about making things easy for a bit. Worry about what makes you distinctive for a bit and start to build from there. Let me just say that when I first visited your LinkedIn page, I have to say it was an absolute riot. There was like inside jokes, and I was like looking at the banner and it was taking me to the description. The description was taking me somewhere else. It sounds complicated, but it was a thread. It was a story that you were telling. So anyone who's listening and watching today, do check out Nicole's LinkedIn page for a few top tips on how to structure what yours should look like, as well as thinking about this formula and bearing that in mind. Now, as I said earlier, we like to make things really, really practical. We want to give people things they can take away and try. What's the starting gun for you as far as this is concerned? What's the thing that people should do first once this episode finishes?
I think probably grab a pen and paper and write out the one thing that you think your clients would say about you that's unique to you. Why do they work with you instead of anybody else? But then follow it up with one thing that your friends or your family would say about you that makes you unique, and see if there's a way that you can create your USP for LinkedIn from the two.
Nicole, we are coming into land, and it's been so great having you on the show. Thank you so much for making some time for Strategy Shorts, and let's speak again soon.
Thanks so much, Dan.